With that, I'll hand it off to Senator Booker. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. It is incredible to stand here with colleagues from the House and the Senate to stand for American values. We are a country that does not adhere to our values only when it's convenient, whether it's freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the fundamental values that distinguish us as a light unto all nations for what great democracies are and who great people can be. We know our history. We are at our best when times are tough, that we don't abandon our common values, but we adhere to them more strongly. And yes, we have dark chapters, like when the St. Louis, during the Holocaust, sailed to our shores and was turned around, where folks were sent back to those horrors and many died. It was coming out of that history that we as a nation affirmed that our values, our ideals, our virtue would be made real in law, codified by our government, that we would say never again. And yet here we are now, when there is a global migration crisis, where we are seeing political persecution, religious violence, all across our planet driving a migration crisis. At a time in human history that calls for us as Americans, to be a light and a beacon for how to address these global challenges. We are seeing the extension of Title 42 that ultimately is putting people in crisis and in danger, facing persecution and violence, back into those situations. I have been to the border. I have crossed and met with women escaping persecution who tried to legally present themselves for asylum and were turned away, and they are living a nightmare where they literally have to hide themselves to avoid sexual violence, robbery, and more, or being forced to consider to try to break American laws and enter illegally. This is the time in our country where we should be setting an example for humanity, where we should be adhering to our values, where we should be, as the prophet from the Old Testament says, a light unto nations. I'm proud to stand with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for our values, for our common virtues, for the law. We can do better. We must do better. This is a time that calls to both conscience, it calls to leadership, and it calls to the heart of our country. I'm very proud to bring up right now a new colleague,